Good afternoon, everyone. Today's presentation is on pre-tax benefits in GIOA. As you all know, effective January 1st, we began offering pre-tax benefits to team members. So that means their medical, dental, vision, and HSA accounts, if they're participating, will come out of paychecks on a pre-tax basis. Keep in mind, voluntary life, short-term disability, and voluntary coverages will all remain post-tax. This is super important for us this year. It's the first year we've been able to do pre-tax benefits, so everyone is excited about it, but there are rules that come along with pre-tax benefits, and that's what we will go over today. On our agenda, we're going to talk about Section 125, cafeteria plans, what that means for us. That's actually how we're allowed to have pre-tax benefits, so we'll cover that. We're also going to cover what a qualified life event is. This is the way that a team member can make changes to their benefits. The most important piece of today's presentation. We want to keep this in mind because gone are the days where we can terminate coverages without a reason. Now that we're pre-tax, we do have to follow rules. And we're going to cover what changes can be made under those qualified life events, and then a few helpful hints that you can use, your team members can use as we're transitioning into the pre-tax world for 2026. What is Section 125? Section 125 is the legal name of what is deemed a cafeteria plan. It basically means we are under IRS, which are tax rules and regulations, for our benefit plan, and those rules allow us to give those benefits to team members on a pre-tax basis. Essentially, your benefits come out before you pay taxes, so it lowers how much taxes you actually pay. And so you get those tax savings and advantages for the benefits being pre-tax, but because they are pre-tax, we have rules that we must follow in order to maintain our pre-tax benefit standard by the IRS. All right, so let's just break that down a little bit. Three different points about Section 125. The first point is pre-tax savings. If you don't remember anything else about Section 125, that is what allows us to have pre-tax savings under the IRS code. Now, the second thing to remember, now that we are pre-tax, we have rules on how benefits can be elected. This means when a team member or anybody under the pre-tax benefits elects benefit elections, medical, dental, vision, HSA, there's a little bit of flexibility on HSA, and we'll talk about that in a moment. You are locked in to that election for a full year. That means you can't drop it at any time. This is greatly different than what we were doing last year in 2025. So last year we were post-tax. So that means if a team member could not afford their coverages, if they didn't want them anymore, it did not matter. They can drop them for whatever reason. In 2026, this year, they will no longer be able to drop the coverage unless they have a qualified event. We've always used the qualified events to add coverage. We've never been able to not do that. However, what is new for us is the removal of coverage. So in 2026, you have to have a reason, a qualified reason to add or remove or change your coverage. And that is because now we're under Section 125, which is how we are able to get those pre-tax benefits. The IRS does give us a compliance requirement, which is number 3. So it's not just because we want to be difficult, we don't want to let you change your benefits. It is because the IRS deems that because we're lowering our taxable income, we're basically getting a tax break, then they require these events to be active in order for us to make these changes. So there is a compliance component to it. If we don't adhere to the compliance component, we can lose the pre-tax standing for the entire plan. So this is why we're having this training with operators, admins, and we're going to have some with team members as well, just to make sure everybody remembers this is a compliance requirement for our entire plan. I'm going to pause just briefly just to check the chat to see if there are any questions. Does anybody have any questions about Section 125? And this is very high level. It's not meant to be in the weeds. It's just to let you know pre-tax benefits fall under Section 125, and that means we have rules that we must follow for compliance. Are there any questions before I proceed? No, nobody has any questions? Okay. The biggest question we've gotten from operators is why are benefits not pre-tax for operators, right? Under Section 125, one of the stipulations is that the benefits are not favoring highly compensated individuals. So in this case, it would be we're not giving the best benefits and giving cheaper benefits to those people who make more money, which would for us be our operators. So in order to deem that, a plan must pass something called non-discrimination testing. Is tests under Section 125 as a part of our requirement. In order for us to pass non-discrimination testing, the operator benefits must be post-tax. That means we're not favoring our plan towards the highly compensated. And this will allow us to pass non-discrimination testing so we can offer pre-tax benefits to our team members. That is why the operators are not a part of the pre-tax benefit. We've been looking at this for several years, trying to figure out a way in order to keep our benefits pre-tax to take this piece up because it was something highly desired by all the operators for their team members. And this is the way we can do it is by excluding the operators. And that is for compliance testing. We did talk about this at strategy a little bit, so there may not be any questions on that, but check in the chat just in case. Any questions there? No? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about qualified life events. You've heard me say this word. Qualified life events are really just changes that happen in an employee's life. Since we are pre-tax, the IRS had deemed which life events are qualified. Every change in every person's life is not a qualified event, but there are several that do qualify. Marriage and divorce, if you have a child, if you adopt a child, if you get legal guardianship, a court-ordered guardianship of a child, if you have a qualified medical child support order, which we actually process those on your behalf. So that one qualified life event is inside of our purview because it's court ordered. If somebody passes away, if there's a gain or loss of coverage under another plan. So let's say, for example, if your spouse loses their coverage under their employer, you can add them onto our plan. That is a loss of coverage. Or if they add you to their plan, you have now gained coverage. So those things will allow you to make changes to your benefits, and that's for medical, dental, or vision. And that does include if you get a Medicaid or a Medicare approval or CHIP. And CHIP is the Child Health Protection. That's the under Georgia, it's called Peach Care. In other states, it may be called other things, but it's the child care coverage in the state for children who cannot get coverage under their parents or the parents cannot afford the coverage for the child. And inside of our Geared Up portal and inside of your operator dashboard on GIOA.info, those legal notices have those CHIP offices where employees can get assistance if they need some state insurance for their children. But those things do allow for you to change your benefits. Also, if a team member begins or returns from a medical leave of absence or military leave, this one we've not talked about a lot historically because we do not monitor the leave for the operators, but you as the operator are monitoring leave for your stores. So when your team members go out on leave or when they come back from leave, they can change their benefits because they may not be able to afford the premium while they're out, or when they come back, they may want to change those as well. So when we do the leave training, in a couple weeks, we'll be talking about this in particular during that leave training, so don't miss that. And then the last reason will be a change in employment status. These are the main ones. There is one other one that we don't have listed here because it's a massive move, and so people often misinterpret it. But if you do have a team member, let's say that's moving from Georgia to California, that is a change in address, and so they can make changes for that as well. Are there any questions on the qualified life events? Okay, point. Whenever a team member goes in to make their benefit changes, the qualified life event, they have to choose what it is. Keep in mind, the system is going to tell them you must submit documentation for these events, which is what we're about to talk about. So just because they choose this event, just because they enroll, it does not mean the benefits are active or the benefits are terminated. They're going to actually pend in the system until the documentation is submitted. Brady, I see your hand. Do you want to ask your question in the chat? Oh, I see one in the Q&A for Patrick, but Brady, I don't see yours. If you can put your question there. Patrick Jones is asking, is becoming pregnant a qualified life event or just the actual birth? So becoming pregnant is not a qualified life event. The birth of a child is the qualified life event. So becoming pregnant does not allow you to change, but actually having the child will allow you to make a change to those benefits. And Brady, that was your question as well. Perfect. Are there any other questions in this space? Good question. Okay. Rules for submitting these life events. We talked about this a little bit preemptively on that last slide. The first, most qualified life events give you 30 days, 30 days to notify us of the change and to make your elections. So this is not a 30 and a 30, it's a 30 total days. So if you have your baby, well, a baby is a bad example. If you get married on January 22nd, you will have 30 days from that date to notify us that you have a life event. So go into the portal and say, I got married, as well as make your changes and submit your documentation. This will be strongly enforced because now we are pre-taxed. So keep that in mind. That is 30 days. The one life event that is, or two life events that are different in that particular space is birth of a child. We do give birth of a child 60 days because newborn mothers, there's so much going on, and adding the baby to the plan may different depending on the spouse, where they want to put the child, or if they're, how the baby's going to be covered. So 60 days for a baby. And death is the only other exception for that. Outside of death and birth, all other qualified life events are 30 days. There is no exception to that. If you get married on January 22nd, your 30 days will be February 21st. If you call us on February 22nd, you have missed your deadline to make changes for that event. So please keep that in mind. That will be strictly enforced this year. That does pop up when you elect that event, that you must turn in documentation. You will get emails, you will get notifications about that, and it should ping you at the end of your enrollment window as well. 30 days. The next point is documentation must be submitted. If you do not submit your documentation, your life event will not be approved. This is for all life events. You must turn in the birth certificate for the baby, or when you first have the baby, sometimes you get a confirmation of birth. We will take that. Inside of the portal, it tells you what's acceptable. If you get married, we need the marriage certificate, not the license. The license doesn't mean you actually got married. The certificate does show you got married. If you are covered under your husband's or your wife's plan, then you would need to show proof that you now have that coverage and the date it became effective before that coverage under us can be dropped. So this is super important that you remember you must turn in your documentation. I'm going to pause because there's a question. When it comes to documentation, are we collecting that and uploading it ourselves or that team members on their end and in their profiles? So you do not have to collect any documentation on behalf of your team members. When they go in and make this event, it will notify them how to upload the information in the portal and where to upload it inside of the document center. So those instructions are sent to them along with the link. So there should be nothing that you have to do. If a team member is having problems uploading it, they can call the 800 number and get assistance with that. But you are also welcome to call us if you're having trouble locating it. We're happy to assist you with that. All right. The next thing with the rules for a submission on your documentation, elections will pend until the documentation is approved. Okay. So I did say that earlier. I want to make sure we all heard that. Just because it's showing the effective date that your team member put in does not mean that that benefit is approved. It's going to pend. So if they elect coverage and we see it in the system and we see it shows February 1st and you say my team member is not an Anthem, I'm going to check what they did. And if they did a qualified life event, I'm going to check if they submitted their documentation. If the documentation is not there, I will tell you they're not an Anthem because they have not submitted documentation. Once they do that and it's approved, then that coverage will be submitted to Anthem and approved, okay? Just because they upload a piece of paper does not automatically approve that benefit. It has to be reviewed to make sure they submitted the proper documentation. Because if a team member opens up a qualified life event and they're past their time frame, even they submit the documentation, we cannot approve that benefit because they are late. Now, there can be some exceptions to that. We have had some exceptions to documentation, but they're very rare exceptions like I was traveling outside of the country and couldn't get something done, or, I was in the hospital, right? Those things are different. We will look at those on a case by case. And then for death, we do have exceptions on death and divorce, okay? Most dates are effective the first of the following month. So if you got married on January 22nd, your benefits will be effective on 2/1, the first of the next month from your life event, okay? Now, you heard me say you have 30 days to elect coverage. So that means if you take the full 30 days to elect coverage and your coverage is effective 2/1, you may owe premiums, or your team member may owe premiums to you because they did not do it immediately as they opened up that life event. So keep that in mind, that even though we give them 30 days to make their elections, we always encourage people to make those elections as soon as possible when they know they have a qualified event, so they will not miss deductions. Are there any questions? I don't see anything in the chat and the Q&A, but I just want to make sure before I continue. One question. As far as effective dates going into effect on the first of the next month, is that even the case with a child? That is not the case with a birth of a child, Brady. That can be the case with adoption, unless the adoption paperwork has a specific date on it. It can be the case with legal guardianship, unless the court explicitly orders a specific date. With children, most of the times on birth, every time with birth, is the date of birth for the child. With adoption, is typically the date of placement. We try to keep it as close to placement as possible so it doesn't impact people's adoption. But with that court order dependency, most times it's the first of the month because most courts deem the first of the month. Did that answer your question, Brady? Great question. Perfect. Any other questions? Love the questions. No? Okay. So a few tidbits and closing remarks. With these pre-tax benefits, the reason why we had this training today was not only to let you know what happens when team members elect their qualified events, what they have to submit, but to remind you, one, that while the operators are not directly getting pre-tax benefits, you do get a reduction in your payroll taxes, about 7.65%. So there's still a benefit to you as an operator to have these pre-tax benefits. And two, to remind everyone that we are in a corrective window. The reason why we've been announcing this corrective window and pushing this corrective window and sending communications to everybody about the corrective window is because one thing that you may have noticed in the qualified life events is unable to pay was not one of the qualified life events. So this is your team members' time to really review their benefits to make sure they have the benefits that they want. They would have had 2 paychecks by this point. So to understand if they can afford these premiums or not based on where they are today. Okay. And then they can drop them or change them through January 30th, 2026. Once we are out of the corrective window for this month, they will be held to the qualified life events and the rules that we just covered on how they can change their benefits. If a team member changes from full-time to part-time, that is a qualified event. So at that point, if their pay decreases and they can't afford the benefit, of course, that's a qualified event. They can change the benefit. But I'm talking about team members who are not having any changes and then saying things are not affordable. So keep that in mind, that we encourage everybody to review their check stubs and make sure to look at their benefits, make sure they have all their dependents added, make sure they're in the right coverage levels, because after January 30th, we will be bound by our QLE rules under Section 125. We do have a question in the chat. The question is, so team members are stuck in these plans until the end of the year. They cannot cancel that qualified life event. Stuck is a more derogatory word. I'm going to say they have elected to participate in these plans and they cannot change that election without a qualified life event. Now, we are in a corrective window right now. So if they want to drop their coverages for medical, dental, vision, they can drop those during this corrective window. After this corrective window, you are correct, they will need to have a qualified life event in order to drop the coverage or change the coverage or even to add coverage. So keep that in mind. That is correct. All right. The next question is, with regards to premiums, if there is a qualified life event, how quickly will the deduction reflect in payroll once they enroll? Is there a possibility we may have to collect, as you referenced previously? So once the benefit is approved, that will reflect in payroll on the next pay file to Chick-fil-A. We send payroll files to Chick-fil-A weekly on Wednesdays. So every Wednesday, Chick-fil-A gets a file. Now, I will tell you, if a team member drags with turning in their documentation to approve to approve their life event to either drop or add the coverages in, that could delay when the benefits become effective on your side. So yes, that could be an impact to that if the team member adds something or if they drop something and they may need a refund. So we do encourage team members to do that as fast as possible. Now, with all that being said, last year this was in the same process to add benefits. The difference is this year is the dropping of the benefits. So there could be a delay if the team member does not turn in their documentation timely. Okay. Karen, did I answer your question? All right. Next question. You've probably answered this, but they only need QLEs to drop health, dental, or vision, correct? Or is that also in the case of short-term disability or other coverages? I assume not, since those are post-tax. You are correct, Brady. If they are trying to do something to their life insurance, to their short-term disability, if they're eligible for both of those, or to their Securian products, which is the accident, hospital indemnity, or oh, my brain just died. Those three products for Securian, those do not need a qualified event. Those are all post-tax benefits, okay? With the post-tax benefits, if they want to drop the post-tax, they can drop those. Adding of the post-tax cannot be done at any time. That is during open enrollment or during a newly qualified event. So I'm newly full-time, then I can add those life insurance policies or the short-term disability policies. But yes, they can drop them at any time. So that does not, these rules for QLEs do not apply to those post-tax benefits. That is accurate. These rules also to drop do not apply to operators because operators are still post-tax. So this only applies to team members in order to drop or change coverages. Now, in order for an operator to add coverage, we do require operators to submit documentation, but since you're still post-tax to drop, we do not need that documentation. Brady, did that answer your question? Perfect. Okay. That is the end of our presentation. I will hang around for additional questions if anybody has them, but certainly want to ensure that we are successful in our ventures this year as we take on these pre-tax benefits. So keep in mind that we want your team members to be successful in what they're doing. We want to be sure that we're supporting them. And if you could help us by asking them to review their benefits before January 30th and calling in if they need to make those changes to make sure that they're affordable, and then encourage them to attend our team member trainings that are coming up and to watch the pre-tax video that we distributed. We put that out on social media. We put that on GIOA.info. We emailed it to operators, and every team member got a copy of it when we announced the corrective window. So please encourage them to review that video as much as possible because it does give them all of these tips that we talked about today in order for them to be successful in 2026 under our new pre-tax benefits. Thank you again for joining, and I will be around for questions. That ends today's presentation.